I have a couple stories for you today. The first one talks about people who have moved to Florida basically regretting their purchases. It's a case of buyer's remorse on a grand scale. And there's an article called "The Great Florida Migration is Coming Undone" that talks about this. Anthony Holmes was part of the Great Florida Migration. In 2021, he moved from Virginia to a gated suburban community in Tampa. Now that he has to leave, Holmes is another victim of a glutted housing market where buyers are increasingly hard to find. He paid $550,000 for his 5-bedroom home and spent another $50,000 on solar panels and interior improvements. And about these solar panels, guys, if you ever buy a home with solar panels, you have to qualify for that loan. Americans love debt. They love buy now, pay later. So they will put these solar panels on leases, and the buyer has to qualify for the lease also. So it's not just a $550,000 house that you're having to qualify for. It's also the $30,000 on the solar panel lease. So it's actually a $580,000 loan that you have to apply for. $580,000 worth of debt. And a lot of people aren't able to qualify for all this debt. They might be able to qualify for the house, but if they can't qualify for the solar panel lease, then the sale falls through. And this has happened numerous times. I've spoken with many different people who have experienced this, and it's really disappointing for both the buyer and the seller. And everyone regrets getting solar leases when the buyers can't qualify for the lease. So just something to pay attention to if you're ever tempted to get solar panels on a lease. Remember that anyone who buys your house or tries to buy your house in the future will have to qualify for that loan also. When he had moved back to Virginia for work, Holmes expected to sell his house quickly, but since listing it in February, he has had no luck. He dropped the price 5 times to $583,900 and would be happy to simply break even. "I can't unload the thing," Holmes said. "In 8 months, I've had 0 offers. No one even showed up to the open houses. Nobody." Across much of Florida, and especially along the western coast, a surplus of inventory and dwindling buyer interest are slowing sales and keeping homes on the market longer. Surging insurance costs, high mortgage rates, and high home prices have more people reassessing the Florida dream. Those who must sell their homes right now because of life changes are finding a frosty reception as demand dwindles. After doubling between 2017 and 2024, home prices in most of the state have been mostly flat since March 2023. But with homes valued at all-time highs in many locations, analysts worry that a price correction may be just around the corner. And I have news for the analysts, is that the price correction is already here. If you're paying attention, if you're looking at actual listings, at what's actually going on the ground, instead of looking at things from a 30,000-foot view from an ivory tower, price corrections are happening all over the place. And so what I've been asking people on this channel is, are you prepared? Have you prepared yourself with your income, your credit, and your down payment? Because opportunities are everywhere right now, and they are only going to increase as we get into 2025. For condo owners who haven't maintained their buildings, the bill is coming due. Prices are plummeting at many older buildings. While units built 10 years ago or less are selling for about 9% more today than they did last year, which is good news for newer constructions, units 30 years or older are going for 19% less than they did last year, according to brokerage ISG World. At the Cricket Club condominium in North Miami, for example, 2-bedroom units with water views that had been selling for $450,000 or more are now going for as little as $200,000 after residents were hit with a $134,000 assessment. Do you have $134,000 just laying around? Why not? What's wrong with you? And I hate the saying, date the rate, marry the house. It conjures feelings of high pressure sales tactics and just trying to get people into a house that they don't really have the capacity to pay for. But it is kind of true, actually, although I hate to admit it. It's been said that there's an inverse relationship between the size of the ring and the quality of the marriage, and that the larger the ring is, usually the worse the marriage is, because it kind of reveals a person's true intention to getting into that relationship. And there's another saying, whether by death or whether you still have breath, every marriage ends. So never overpay for a spouse or a house. And some people who have bought in Florida since 2021 probably feel like they've been ripped off as their properties plunge in value and they are having to pay more for insurance. And it's buyers like these who felt ripped off who filed the NAR lawsuit because realtors were taking advantage of people in an overheated market that was just full of frenzy and pumped up with free money. So a lot of people are feeling ripped off, especially in Florida right now. They probably feel like they were victims of a bait and switch scheme, which is a common fraud tactic. There was a bait and switch scheme at a zoo in China. There were pandas that were publicized and advertised for people to come and see. And when people came and saw the two panda bears, they realized that they weren't pandas. They were white dogs that had been painted black around the eyes according to the coloring pattern of a panda bear. And people complained and wanted their money back. There was an outcry because the fraud was so blatant. And it's kind of funny when you think about it. A zoo just putting dogs into a habitat and painting them like panda bears. And some people called them pan dogs. And one of the funniest comments was that someone said it's a Temu version of a panda. But also these bait and switch tactics are being felt by Amazon employees and Twitter employees who are having to return to work. But that's not all that's going on in the housing market right now. Another article out of Fortune.com entitled, U.S. homes aren't just more expensive, they're also getting smaller. Homes are shrinking in size and soaring in price. The median American home is 128 square feet smaller and $125,000 more expensive than it was 5 years ago, according to a recent analysis from service journalism group USA Today Homefront. Its research team used Realtor.com data to examine changes in listing prices and square footage across 150 of the most populous metropolitan areas. Among those areas, only 18 have seen home sizes expand during the last 5 years. But without fail, each one saw prices rise. Basically, the median home is more than 6% smaller now, while the median price is 39% more expensive overall and 52% more expensive per square foot. Metros with shrinking square footage continue to get more expensive per square foot, the analysis said. Essentially, building smaller houses isn't stopping the growth in price per square foot, leaving buyers with a smaller house and an inflated mortgage. Builders have become increasingly aware of how bad affordability challenges are today and that they need to do something to continue to be successful, Ali Wolf of home construction data firm Zonda explained at the time. And in this case, they're trying to lower the overall home size to help lower the average overall home price. Consumer prices are a hot political issue as voters struggle with the rising cost of basic necessities. Prices aren't going up as fast as they once were, but one of inflation's frustrating side effects is still strong: shrinkflation. Senate Democrats have a proposal to tackle it. Senator Bob Casey, a Pennsylvania Democrat, introduced a bill on Wednesday called the Shrinkflation Prevention Act of 2024. The legislation, which is co-sponsored by 8 other senators, would direct the Federal Trade Commission to consider shrinkflation, as consumer advocates call the downsizing of products while prices remain the same or even going up an unfair or deceptive act to practice and prohibit manufacturers from engaging in it. The bill would also authorize the FTC and state attorneys general to pursue civil actions against corporations for shrinkflation. Corporations are trying to pull the wool over our eyes by shrinking the products without reducing their prices. Anyone on a tight budget sees it every time they go into the grocery store, Casey said in a statement. And when they say they're trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, that must be pretty thin wool because everyone can see it. You see it every time when you go into the grocery store. You can hold it in your hand. You can feel how light a product is compared to the last time. You know this is a smaller product and you look at the price, it's either the same or it's gone up. So this is pretty common knowledge. And if corporations are trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, it's not working very well. This is a pretty common practice that's been happening since the 1970s when we were taking off the gold standard and inflation started happening on a regular basis. Takeout meals and other products are getting smaller, even as prices rise. Microwave meals are skimpier. Bottles of dish soap contain fewer ounces. One consumer who asked not to be named to protect his online identity compared the size of Rice Krispie treats he bought at 2 different times at the same Costco store in Salt Lake City and found that they were 1.3 ounces per bar in December and 0.70 ounces in February. The box looked exactly the same, he said in his post on Reddit. There's like 3 pieces of chicken in the butter chicken, a TikTok user said of her Trader Joe's microwave meal last month. What the hell? And shrinkflation is definitely going on in the housing market. But a good question you should ask yourself as you're doing your house shopping is, how much home do you really need? In another video, I'll talk more about the increase in home sizes that have been happening for probably the past 200 years. The size of homes has doubled. And you have to wonder if we even need that much square footage, especially since the sizes of families are going down. Families used to have 7 family members in them around the turn of the 20th century. Now it's like 3 or 4 at most. Millennials and Gen Z are planning on having fewer children than any generation of Americans ever. And we continue to buy bigger homes. And so you have to wonder why you need so much space. And smaller is better oftentimes when it comes to owning a home. Just on a practical basis, you don't have to clean as much. Fewer things can go wrong. If anything breaks, if there are burst pipes, you have water damage, water intrusion, there's simply less square footage of materials that you have to replace. So you don't have to pay as high of a premium for that house. You can self-insure, and so that you don't have to make an insurance claim, and you can pay for the damage yourself, any drywall or subfloor or anything like that. So smaller is actually better for many families in a lot of cases. So even though shrinkflation is going on, you're not powerless to guard yourself from it. You can make smart consumer decisions when buying a house. Don't let yourself be pressured into buying a 2,500 square foot house. A lot of times a 1,500 square foot house is perfectly enough for a couple people and 1 or 2 kids. And this is actually something that I'll talk more about in an upcoming video. So on that note, I'll stop the video here. I want to thank you guys for continuing to tune in. If you're new to this channel, thanks for giving it a chance. I hope it brought you some value. Remember to like, subscribe, comment below, share this with someone who you think may find it useful. And don't give up when you can get ahead.